Hi, I'm Jeff Nelder, and I'm joined by my co-host Charlie Nguyen, and we are job ready. Welcome. We're joined today by Norm Allgood, who's the principal owner of Next Phase Education, where they specialize in empowering higher education institutions to achieve sustainable growth and long-term success. Norm's been doing this for 25 years. Welcome, Norm.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Norm,
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, Jeff, I'm glad you say 25 years and not 3 decades because you're dating Norm, and so some folks like Norm, I'm sure he might be sensitive to being
Yeah,
dated on the show.
yeah. I am closer to the 3 decades than I am the 25 years. But yeah, I appreciate you helping me out on that, Charlie.
But seriously, Norm, you've really been deep in healthcare, the education plus workforce connection there. And
Sure.
having been in healthcare for multiple decades, how has the workforce landscape changed from when you first started to what you see today? Let's jump right in.
Sure. I mean, when I entered back in the day, I think of my days back at the Institute for Professional Development, the first company of Apollo, before even University of Phoenix started. But I was with them in 2001, and capacity meant, blowing out the RN to BSN. That was the big deal, and we didn't have it online at the time, and we had all of these hospital relationships all over the place, and it was very local. And then the RN to BSN moved into online, and eventually became a commodity. But all in all, it's about capacity. Even then, we were able to really knock it out with the RN-BSN and stuff. And we always had that need for pre-licensure nursing. But that push at that time, Jeff, was really related to the magnet status in the hospital, right? Everybody wanted to get to a certain percentage of BSN populated employment or nurses. And COVID changed all of that. COVID really altered everything. Today, magnet status after COVID or during COVID was thrown in the janitorial closet. The door was closed. It was locked. They brought LPNs back to the hospital. They brought in RNs. They stopped this push towards the DNP by 2025 because they realized the family nurse practitioner was really hitting all 8 cylinders running. And then you saw a huge influx of online. And so back in the day, you wouldn't think of doing any didactic instruction for healthcare or pre-licensure nursing online. Today, 40-50% of that is done online. And it's an efficient model. It's a more efficient model, but there's so much room to still grow overall. And there's so many factors that hinder that growth. But I couldn't imagine what it would be like, though, if we didn't have COVID. Yeah, it was bad for everybody, but it really was the catalyst to do a lot more digital. And it also pulled the curtain back and said, we can have layers again in our hospitals where it's not all BSN. It can be RNs, it could be LPNs, it could be FNPs. So from that standpoint, there have been a lot of changes too. So.
Well, and Norm, so for the healthcare folks listening, they'll understand this, but what is magnet status? What's that? What does that mean? What does that have to do with healthcare workforce shortages?
There was a study done, multiple studies that showed that if we could staff hospitals with bachelor prepared nurses, not just RNs, but a full 4-year degree, that patient care improved, mortality rate decreased. Patient outcomes were healthier and benefited everybody. And for the most part, that was true. But they also, in doing so, they jettisoned a lot of people within the hospital that at one time provided great care. The LPNs had 20 years of experience, and they were doing what a BSN person was doing, but they got rid of them all, right, through retirement and things like that. And they found their way to in-home healthcare. And then when COVID hit and they they just robbed in-home healthcare to bring, some floor-ready nurses back into the hospital. Now in-home healthcare is struggling to fill that void. So, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head to say that your magnet status. I want to say it's like 85%, but that was a big deal. And that really pushed everybody to go into these RN to BSN programs, right? Similar to back in the day when we decided with the No Child Left Behind Act that every paraprofessional had to have 60 credits of college. It pushed everybody into at least an associate degree in some way, shape, or form that were paraprofessionals, and now they're sitting in the classroom with 60 credits. That was a long answer to your question there, Jeff, but that's literally what really was the nexus of magnet status and why they did it.
So what's in it for the hospital, though? Yeah. I mean, sorry, Jeff. What's in it? What's in it for the hospital to have that magnet status? I mean, it's got to be benefits.
Yeah, it is something that they can tout, right, to the patient. Hey, look, we're magnet status. We have this capability of delivering, a higher level of care than you would get in another hospital, and it's that badge of honor that they could wear that would allow them to attract more patients to their particular hospital, to say this is what it is. And a lot of people don't even realize what it is, but they got magnet status. It's kind of like a warranty on a box, right? It makes a patient feel better. It doesn't necessarily always translate into better care. Studies have shown that it does, but you can do a lot with those studies, right? Nobody has said that care has dropped off tremendously since they've allowed LPNs back into the hospital. Nobody's doing that research right now to say that, nor would they, right? They don't want to do that because the alternative is, hey, I'm going to have to staff with traveling nurses. And during COVID, traveling nurses got up to, call it $210,000 a year in salary. I mean, we literally here in Arizona had people working for the hospital system that had been there 10 years that left, went to work for the traveling nurse company, and went right back to work at that hospital making 3 times what they made as a nurse with that hospital system. And so that's extremely expensive. The alternative, too, was if it wasn't the hospital, if it wasn't traveling nurses, God forbid we have another pandemic. But I remember visiting some of the floors during COVID, and not one, like on my father's ward, not one of the nurses were from Arizona. We literally have a 67,000 square foot old hospital where they onboard a lot of these traveling nurses for one of the hospital systems here. And sitting at the nursing desk were not nurses. The people monitoring, picking up the phones and stuff like that, they were from maintenance, they were from accounting. They did everything to do it. But today, a lot of those folks that came from in-home healthcare back into the hospital still remain. But there's still this disconnect between how do we produce those BSN nurses, get them into the hospital where they're a floor-ready nurse, and get them to provide that care. And back in the day, it was degree first, right? Get that degree, then get in and be on the floor. And today, employers want a floor-ready nurse. So if you think about in the 70s, where, the 60s and in early 70s, where was nursing education done? In the hospital. The LPN programs were in the hospital. They moved them out of the hospital. They moved them into higher education. And the gap between what the hospital wanted and what was actually developed with, the curriculum continued to widen. And so when a nurse now comes out of these programs, they're being taught so that they can pass the NCLEX, but there's not enough embedded in that particular program that allows the employer, the hospital in this case, to secure a nurse in their 4 walls upon graduation that can be released day one. It could be 12 months, it could be 18 months, before all of those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and they're trained in the format of the hospital itself and are ready to take patients and be a floor-ready nurse. Some will call it a bedside clinician. I mean, at the end of the day, It's the person giving primary care as a nurse to the patient. And so really COVID also, and it's not all about COVID, but it was such a tipping point. It showed the hospital, hey, we got a lot more power with these nursing schools than we used to think we had, right? We provide clinicals, but we're not getting anything in return but a nurse that's coming in that's brand new, that isn't ready to hit the bricks running. So now, what they're doing is they're pushing back and saying, look, if you can not only teach to the NCLEX and get them to pass that, that's great. If we can find ways to outfit your facilities with equipment that is being, utilized within our hospitals, so when they come in, they're trained on the beds, they're trained on the particular equipment, that just shortens that floor-ready nurse capability or capacity, training, so that they can actually hit the bricks running that much sooner.
Norm, before I dive into love to get your view on it, on what we continue to hear to be major talent shortage, not just nurses, but kind of clinical roles and various roles in the healthcare as well. I heard you mention
right?
that traveling. What was that?
Crisis is the word that people use. I mean,
Correct.
That's a pretty intense word.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I heard you mention, traveling nurses get paid 3 times more, etc. Here's what I want to get your take on this. Is there a correlation between the high price of medical care today to the talent shortage crisis that we're reading and seeing on a daily basis?
I thought academia moved slow until I started to try to do workforce development with hospital systems, and they just can't get out of their own way. And there is a correlation. They're constantly fighting the battle of, how do we pay for traveling nurses? Oh, the way we pay for traveling nurses is if we found a way to get nurses that were coming into our hospital, and not only coming into our hospital and doing the clinicals, but being employed and staying with our hospital. And so we worked with one of the hospital systems, and the play was give me 3 and you'll be debt free. And what we told them is, look, you're going to spend $30,000-$40,000 in a signing bonus to bring somebody in from another hospital, or you could begin to work with partner institution or university college nursing program right out of the gate, embed certain things in their curriculum, and when that student then passes their program, sits for the NCLEX, you give them an initial signing bonus of 1/4 of their tuition. And so they come to work for you, and then at the end of year 1, they get the second, then the third, then the fourth. By the end of year 3, they have been with you 3 years, and their entire program has now been paid for. It's a brilliant idea. And they wanted to move forward with it, but shifting monies around for them to actually get the buy-in from the local hospitals and then the regional direction. And then they just can't get out of their own way to make all that happen. And so what are they forced to do? They continue to do what they've always done, and that's rob Peter to pay Paul. They'll rob another hospital to grab a nurse. So that drives up costs across the board. And it's like this flywheel that doesn't stop until they choose to stop it in some way, shape, or form. And until then, those costs are going to have a ripple effect in what is charged to the patient, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I'm sure other costs associated, other capex costs, are to be a part of that, guilty in that whole equation as well. Norm, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the talent shortage here. We've been hearing it not just recently, but we've been hearing it even before COVID. Mm-hmm. And with the boomer generations, there's going to be much more care needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a sense of kind of where we are today with that crisis from your point of view as an educator, as someone who built a lot of bridges with healthcare providers, but also if you can kind of look into the crystal ball and give us your take 5 to 10 years, 20 years from now, given that significant percent of our population is retiring?
Yeah. we're not getting any younger, especially those people that have been in education 3 decades, Charlie. Um, you know, so the root cause of today's crisis, it's a multi-pronged problem. It's first and foremost, you have an aging population. You know, we're not having as many kids as we once were, and but the people that are in the baby boomer generation and the next generation to follow, we're all getting older. We all need care. It's safe to say that every human here in the United States is touched by a nurse when they come into the world and touched by the nurse when they leave. And there's just not a lot of nurses to do that. You have educator bottlenecks. I sat on a call today, and I'm talking to this particular institution about starting a nursing program. What is the best pathway to do it? And I've been coaching them for 6 months, and then they came back to me with a plan that is pretty much the same plan that anybody has used for the last 40 years. And I'm like, test. Is this on? Because I know I've talked to you about this multiple times, and yet you're going to present to me the exact same plan. It's a definition of insanity. You're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Their response was, well, my nursing faculty are very excited about this and they want to do this. And I'm like, excitement does not translate into, being effective. You have an opportunity here to really produce 3 times the number of nurses with great NCLEX pass scores, better than a traditional program, and yet you're going to continue to create these bottlenecks. You then look at the hospitals that have a clinical placement scarcity, that don't really look at it from a perspective all the time of how they could best utilize their overall clinical placements. You have burnout that's happening at the hospitals. But one of the big things we don't talk enough about are our boards of nursing. And, I used to joke because, I operated nursing, I worked with colleges and universities that operated nursing schools in multiple states. And every single board of nursing in every single state we dealt with believed they invented nursing. And that they were the knowledge source and the only source of knowledge related to how nursing could be delivered. And even though you'd have 14 states that have adopted a new and better way to deliver clinicals and find a way to use simulation that could replace certain clinical rotations and found ways of taking career changers and move them into the fold, you would still have all of these other states that just couldn't get their head around it or chose not to, and you question yourself to say, are the schools deliberately restricting capacity? Are the boards of nursing deliberately restricting capacity so that they could keep the need high? You would like to believe that that's not the case, but oftentimes I would talk to folks and they would say, I think, and I feel, and I believe. And I'm like, those aren't facts. You can think it, you can feel it, you can believe it, but why? Talk to me about that. And getting that, it usually came back to less about facts and more about, this is how my faculty are feeling. This is how my hospital system is. This is what we've experienced. This is, kind of our approach as a board of nursing. And it's really, really frustrating.
Hey, Norm, sorry to interrupt you, but I have to kind of ask you this. So you said, which is very surprising to me, is the hospital, they move even slower than higher ed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so is that the reason? Is regulatory barrier, whether it's nurse licensing or whatever, is that the key reason why they move so slow, or there's other factors involved?
The hospital's not moving slow because of regulatory. The hospital is moving slow because of the bureaucracy. The school would like to say that they're moving slow because they can't do 2 things. They can't get clinicals and they can't get faculty. And that's somewhat true, but it's workable. You got to put in the work, guys. But the boards of nursing, so if you think about it, if we started a program here in Arizona, a pre-licensure nursing program, it's a higher learning commission. So you have that regional accrediting body application. You have the Arizona Post-Secondary Board of Higher Education that you have to, appease. You have the Board of Nursing, another application. You have CCNE, if that's, where your school is at. You have your faculty and all sorts of different things along those lines. All those applications that have to be put in have some level of overlap. But I mean, literally, we almost didn't get approval to start doing a nursing program down here because before the build out, we walked into the shell, we submitted the blueprints, we submitted what it would, the build out would look like when it was done. And the Arizona Post-Secondary Board of Higher Education said, that's great, but we need a fire certificate to say that you've passed the fire inspection for occupancy. I'm like, the build out hasn't begun. There's nothing to pass. The sprinklers haven't been installed. The fire alarms aren't there. The build out hasn't. Well, yeah, but we need that certificate. And we went round and round for 60 days before we could. Literally, I had to have them come to the space and say it is a shell. Nothing's built out yet. It will be, and there will be sprinklers, and there will be fire alarms, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we understand it. But again, it's like so ridiculous, some of the things that you have to go through. And these poor schools, I feel for them because, Dr. Debbie Cottrell over at Texas Lutheran, when we were working with them, she was like, Norm, you help with regulatory with schools on a quarterly basis. We do this every 10 years. And, it's really, really frustrating for these schools to, they're not sitting there with 10 people in their regulatory department that does this type of work all the time. And they're not sitting there with a wheelbarrow of cash to, retain consultants to do this and then have those same consultants try to, work with a post-secondary board of higher education to get something approved that, it cost money those 60 days. It delayed the launch by 60 days because somebody just didn't want to take the time to think through critically, oh, yeah, you can't have a fire inspection if you don't have a build out. So that's just one example, Charlie. I could give you a number of them. But, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. They make it very, very difficult to start nursing programs. They make it difficult once you start. I mean, nobody can explain to me this, right? We sat there and we had a direct entry master's of science in nursing offered at Alverno in Milwaukee 3 times a year. During COVID, we secured the space. We got the regulatory approval by the Post-Secondary Board of Higher Education, the Board of Nursing, the Higher Learning Commission, CCNE, and Alverno started a second group down here in Mesa, Arizona. And, so 6 cohorts of DEMSN students are now being produced by that institution. Texas Lutheran, on the other hand, in Texas, we did the exact same, work with them to get these programs approved. And the Board of Nursing was like, well, we're going to let you only offer 1 cohort every year of no more than 35 students for the first 3 years until we say all 3 cohorts have an acceptable NCLEX pass rate. Now, meantime, we're doing 3 in Milwaukee, 3 in Arizona with another institution. We're doing 3 in Atlanta, Georgia. So all these other states are doing it, but Texas is like, no, we're going to take this approach, right? And if you think, and sure enough, we were like, well, it's better than nothing. So we did it and we waited and we got, 3 cohorts, and now Texas Lutheran is approved in New Braunfels and they're approved in Houston. At the same time, we tried to go into Oregon and couldn't do it in Oregon because the Board of Nursing there says, we're going to take it one step further than Texas. You can start 1 cohort of 30 students in the first 3 years, and then we'll decide if we let you do more. You're like, what?
I see the common theme here. So the Board of Nurses is like a pain in the neck. right? That's
Oh my
essentially
goodness.
that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, and then like in Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Board of Nursing, they just decided we're going to decrease the number of meetings we're going to have. We're not going to get, to this approval. And it wasn't just for pre-licensure nursing. It was for family nurse practitioner. It was for doctor of nursing practice. This buildup of all of these applications just happened to where the governor had to come back in and say, look, you better staff it up because we need nurses. We need family nurse practitioners. We need doctor of nursing practice. Why are you doing this? And, it's not to lay everything at the Board of Nursing's feet, but man, they just got to get with the time. They have to understand AI is there. You can leverage it. You can teach online. You can do didactics online. You can do more than 20% of your clinical rotation with simulation. You can do more than that. Hospitals need to, step up to the plate too and help these nursing schools with equipment and different things like that. And these nursing schools have to say, you know what, we're not just going to teach to the test. We're going to also find a way to get these people into, a floor-ready nurse position. So,
Norm, how are people using AI in healthcare and nursing?
They're not, but they can be, right? So my book that's coming out here, The 10 Pillars of AI Enablement for Higher Education, right? I write in a chapter about AI-supported learning. And so what we really have the opportunity to do with curriculum development, just with AI, what schools are currently doing with AI is they're looking for it to see if students are using it and they're penalizing them, right? What they could be looking at is how do we have the ability to adapt existing curriculum that much more quickly? We write it once with instructional designers, media specialists, instructional strategists, subject matter experts, and we load that through our learning management system. We double it back into how that student came into our program. We tie back, where is that lead coming from? Is there a particular connectivity between the lead source and how well they do in the program? But at the same time, the student has the ability to be tested when they're coming into the program to see what type of learner they are. And if I wanted to create 5, 10, 15 different ways of achieving the learning outcomes and the learning objectives and curriculum 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have had to have done that by rewriting that curriculum multiple times. Today, AI can do much of that. It could say, all right, these are the objectives and the outcomes that we need to achieve. This particular student is more auditory. This particular student is more tactile. How do we go ahead and develop this curriculum so that we're addressing that? And, there are plugins and there's different ways that D2L and Canvas have some of those things in it. You have CRMs like HubSpot that can connect with those other pieces like that, but institutions aren't taking that step. They're still doing it the same way, and what you're left with is curriculum that hasn't been updated in a long time. And online program managers, if you were partnered with them, like Synergist, we were always looking to do minor rewrites of the curriculum on a yearly basis, major rewrites every 3 to 5 years. But that's still not fast enough. And unfortunately, online program managers realize, oh my goodness, that can be costly to do that. So we're going to remove that, and we're going to give you a guide on the side and set it and forget it. So what you're stuck with is curriculum that, may never be updated, or if it is updated, it's updated in a rogue manner by a faculty member that, did it on their own because they knew it needed to be updated, but it's not consistent across the board. So it's very, very troubling. But AI can help with that straight across the board, updating that curriculum, looking at, you could literally create bots now, Jeff and Charlie, that can scrub and look at the people that, if you want to know where the train is going, some of these schools are laying the tracks, right? And it could look at them on a continuous basis. Did they change the order of classes? Did they, revise the course description? Have they, embedded different things in it? instead of, waiting to see or pick up the phone and talk to another nursing school and just get anecdotal evidence. You could literally be scraping this off of, course catalogs on a monthly basis to see where you need to head. So there's so many things AI could do that we just choose not to use it for. The problem you're going to have here is if you don't start using it, it's not like the time frame we had to adopt online learning. We're not going to have 10, 15, 20 years to adopt it. You're talking 24, 36 months, and so there's so many tools that are available from that perspective.
So Norm, let me ask you this, because typically in a free market, open market like ours, and the market corrects itself, right? And so if an institution is not moving fast enough, not having the most relevant content and curriculum, so on and so forth, somebody else will come along and eat their lunch.
Yeah.
But in the higher ed, I mean, there's accreditation, there's regulatory requirements. How open is it for an innovator to come in and disrupt it from the inside out? Forget about all the regulation, but just think about, how do we get more qualified, more well-trained healthcare professionals to address the talent shortage?
You have to have people that are willing to put in the work. And I'm not talking the same work that they've always done. They have to think differently about the work that they're putting in, right? And I remember when I was selling Synergis, and Synergis Education, we would partner with colleges and universities, and we focused really on two primary programs: pre-licensure nursing and doctoral level programs in education. 15% of our business was EDD, 85% was pre-licensure nursing and in post-licensure nursing. And we would sit with potential buyers, and they would go through and they're like, man, this is really hard. I'm like, it is, but you have a playbook, you have people that know what they're doing, and because of that, it's repeatable. And people, unfortunately, whether it's online program managers or institutions, they're not interested in hard. They're interested in just what for an OPM, what can scale, what can generate revenue, what can generate profit quickly. And for institutions, they're interested in, how can I keep my faculty from coming after me and giving me, a no confidence vote or being all up in arms. And so they hit the easy button. And so, I just give the example. Synergis Education launched 10 of the direct entry Masters of Science and Nursing programs with colleges and universities across the United States, of the 81 that were in the United States. I sold Synergis in 2022. I stayed on to run it till 2024. Do you know how many DEMSM programs are in the United States right now? 81. 81. So, but those programs had, a 90 plus retention rate, a 90 plus NCLEX pass rate, could produce 100, 110 nurses per location, some 140. But yet there have been, there has been some fall off and some programs picked up, but still hovering around 81. Maybe it's 83. But I mean, really? This is a fantastic program that is economically viable for the student, economically viable for the hospital, economically viable for the partner institution, but it requires work to get launched. It requires work to initially teach it, but once it's done and it's in place, it's magical. But it's so much easier to say, I'll do a BSN. I'll listen to everybody else and I'll approach it this way. And it's unfortunate, from that perspective.
So by scaling more locations, you got more
Yeah, because once
you add more volume, right?
yeah, so I mean, with Texas Lutheran, for instance, we built it in New Braunfels, but because this program is super transportable, you go to your next location, you open it up, it's 16,000 square feet. You put in a simulation room of 1,500 square feet. You put in a skills lab of another 1,500 square feet, and the rest is administration and classrooms. And you start producing another 110, 130, 140 nurses. You go to the next city. It is a very portable program that you can take, and it could really help solve the nursing problem. But you have to pay for the brick and mortar when you're going in there. You have to outfit it, and you have to, get the clinical rotations. Oh, that's hard, and so they don't do it, right? Yeah, it's very, very frustrating to me to look back and see what the opportunity is out there. But there are others that are, Brian Mueller, Grand Canyon, he's doing some big things, right? Expanding his nursing program, taking advantage of people that don't want to do the hard things, right? Brian does the hard things. Not everybody's wired like Brian, right? You and I, Charlie, we worked, there when Brian was there. He did the hard things, right? And he makes it happen. But not everybody doesn't have that same ethos, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, Brian, he was a high school football coach, like at one point in his life, right? He
Yeah,
knows how to
basketball.
motivate people to do the hard things. I have a
Absolutely.
lot of admiration for him. But Norm, we're coming towards the end here, and I could probably dig in with you for a few hours at a time, and I would love to. But looking ahead, you've made your bones as an innovator. We've talked a lot today about the bureaucratic barriers that are in place. And it's a funny thing. I mean, you're kind of at the nexus of bureaucratic barriers, right? Between healthcare and education, it doesn't get much slower than that. If you look ahead 5 to 10 years, and let's say you can get past these barriers, what does a sustainable healthcare workforce ecosystem look like? And is it different by region?
So in 5 to 10 years, Jeff, I will be in this space 4 decades, right? It really is these hospital systems really realizing they have the power to bring in colleges and universities and saying, look, you want our clinicals, we want your nurses, we need to work together. I really think it's the hospitals that need to set the tone. And they need to also be the ones that are pushing these boards of nursing, right? We need nurses. Stop hitting the easy button. Get us the approvals to do certain things where we can take AI in and scaffold it through our programs and through our learning and through our clinicals. It's also taking that AI and personalizing nursing, right, for the region with what they're within. And so think about it. The nurses, if right now in Dearborn, Michigan, that are working in hospitals have a regional type of approach that they have to follow, because Dearborn, Michigan has the highest population of Middle Eastern people next to the Middle East, right? So there's different rules on how they handle patients per se because of that. And, we still approach it there in a very similar manner, with written text on how we train those nurses. But I'm not saying AI is the answer to everything, but AI can help tremendously, fixing those problems. Hospitals, though, to me, are where they hold the cards. They can push back on boards of nursing. They can push back on colleges and universities and say, look, you want our clinicals, you design the curriculum so that we have floor-ready nurses. Boards of nursing, you want us to, do clinical rotations and everything along those lines so that we can produce it. You need to figure out ways that leverages technology, leverages new learning approaches, and approve it when people go to put these in their application to get approval for new degree programs or ways of learning, so that we can get out ahead of this. Because if we don't, we're going to be in a whole lot of hurt. So
Norm, let's dig into the AI piece a little bit, because I think for a lot of different industries, when you think about AI, they think about job killer, job replacement, things like that. But in healthcare, industry where there's severe crisis, whatever term you want to use, with talent shortage, and it's only going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And AI is can help us get a lot more work done as a result of it, right? And so I feel like this healthcare is probably a prime candidate to go head first with AI augmentation. And that could mean everything from the education in terms of supply to get more, to get faster trained, all the way to kind of a on the floor, whether it's a co-pilot concept, like to get to allow the nurse to get more done. Um, where do you see specific opportunities for AI? I mean, you talk about the curriculum piece earlier, but if you can kind of walk us through that upstream to downstream, where do you think AI can really be augmented um, to get a lot more done?
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about scaffolding it, with curriculum and personalizing learning. But there's two other areas that I would point out. There's workflow relief, right? We'll talk about that here in a second, and real time quality signal for leaders, right? So how we have dealt with burnout in nurses and different things like that, or shortages. If I'm the hospital, I'm saying, we appreciate you. Here's a pizza party, right? That doesn't do it, right? If you think about workflow relief, how can you take AI to another level? How can you know, leverage the clinical rotations so that instead of it's an 8-to-1, could you have 8 students with a nurse that are going through certain programs here while another 24 watch it live and see it happen? Are we really thinking through the clinical rotations as well? Whereas, for instance, I was just visiting St. Leo's in right outside of Tampa, and the dean of the program there has been working with the hospital system, the chief nursing officer specifically, and it's not necessarily AI driven, but the innovative approach that they're taking to clinical rotations is the people that are actually doing the clinical rotations and different things like that are sitting down with the prospective nurses that are in the program. And it's almost like a speed dating to see if there's a fit between the clinical person that's leading it and the students that are coming into it. And then they're taking them through their clinical rotations. At the same time, I hit upon, what if we could have 8 on the rotation and 24 watching? So, um, there are certain companies out there that are doing really innovative things where the stethoscope and all of the types of instruments that are being used by the nurses and the rooms themselves are all camera and AI driven, and it's all live, because there's nothing to say that just because you're doing your pediatrics rotation or your OB rotation that you're going to get exposed to anything that's going to allow you to be a nurse, right? And but if you have the ability to go back and see live, or sit in and you see an ear canal being examined, or a pressure sleeve being placed on a patient's arm, and you're seeing it and it's happening, and it's not some sort of video that just occurred, and you're able to ask questions of that patient and different things along those lines. The technology's there, we're just choosing not to use it. And so and then you talk about real-time quality signals for leaders. There's so many ways of looking at, just from a burnout standpoint that the nurses are in. How can you actually measure and look at things, and identify opportunities before they happen and address them in the hospital? And we're just not using it like that in any way, shape, or form. We're still doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting different results. Will it happen? Yeah, I think eventually you'll see it, but there's so much more, Charlie. I mean, I could get into, and but AI is there. There's so much we can use in it, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. And it's not going to take away people's jobs. It's going to free up time, right? I remember the time where when the personal computer finally was coming into the fold, they said, you know what this is going to do? This is going to take your work week down to 3 days, and everybody's saying AI is going to take your work. It's not. It's just going to increase your capacity. It's a force multiplier, right? It's I always go back to my days in the military. You have 100 guys on the field, or you could have 2 tanks, right, with 6 guys, and it's equal to the 100 guys on the field because it's a force multiplier, right? So, there's different ways of approaching it, but AI enables nurses, enables hospitals, enables boards of nursing, enables degree granting institutions to have a force multiplier in instruction, in evaluation, in intervention. They just have to begin to use it. And it's not rocket science. It truly, truly isn't. And you don't have to invent it. It's there. They just have to be able to, use it, right? So
I think that's the mic drop moment for today. Norm, you were a force multiplier on the show today. I'll say. Thank you so much, Norm. But it was wonderful to have you here today. Really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Once again, I'm Jeff Nelder, joined by my co-host, Charlie Nguyen. This is Job Ready. You can find us. We're the EFA podcast. You can find us at jobreadypodcast.com or efa.io/jobready. Thank you for joining us today. And thanks again, Norm.
Appreciate it. Take care, guys.